By 2026, every operating system acts as a binding contract. Once you power on a new machine, you are locked into a set of rules for data privacy, workflow limitations, and how you interact with artificial intelligence. This chart breaks down global market share, and the adoption is deeply divided by use case. Windows still holds 66.6% of the desktop market, but Linux has pushed to a historic 3.69% on Steam. Meanwhile, look at the server space, where Linux handles over 51% of global traffic. If you're trying to buy a computer right now, you are getting hammered with marketing terms. Copilot Plus, Apple Intelligence 3.0, local LLMs with 40 tera operations per second. It is a wall of noise. Let's cut through that noise. The concept of one universally superior operating system is a myth built by marketing departments to keep you inside their walled gardens. We aren't going to look at arbitrary synthetic benchmarks today. Instead, we are going to look at the absolute, unchangeable trade-offs demanded by Mac, Windows, and Linux. In this era of distributed computing, your OS choice determines your specific friction points. You have to select the ecosystem whose compromises you are most willing to tolerate. Apple's M5 unified memory architecture sits at the top of the market for energy efficiency. It delivers 25-hour battery life and a cold boot in just 12 seconds. That efficiency requires a high upfront premium, starting at nearly $1,200 for a base model. Because every component is soldered directly to the board, you have zero ability to repair or upgrade that machine down the line. Linux offers the opposite economic advantage. The licensing fee is $0, and the kernel is light enough to run smoothly on a decade-old laptop, effectively doubling the lifespan of existing hardware. Windows 12 takes a more aggressive path. Its strict hardware requirements render millions of older, functional machines obsolete, creating a mountain of e-waste by forcing users to buy new NPUs just to stay current. That new Windows PC also carries recurring costs. To operate within the ecosystem, you are pushed into mandatory Microsoft 365 subscriptions and cloud storage fees that inflate your expenses month after month. This matrix shows the true total cost of ownership over 3 years. When you factor in the entry price, required subscriptions, and projected resale value, a Mac averages around $1,500. Windows sits at $1,200. Linux, with zero software fees, comes in around $600. Long-term hardware costs are driven by software-side planned obsolescence and the recurring tax of mandatory subscriptions. Windows 12 positions Copilot Plus as the central nervous system of your computer. To use it, you need a neural processing unit capable of at least 40 tera operations per second to handle hybrid local and cloud processing. This deep integration demands a severe privacy trade-off. Windows mandates Microsoft accounts, places ads in your user interface, and introduced Recall 2.0, a system that takes screenshots of your activity every few seconds to build a searchable database of everything you do. Linux operates on a philosophy of zero telemetry. Absolutely no data leaves your machine and travels to a corporate server unless you explicitly grant permission. Modern Linux distributions achieve this security through an immutable architecture. The core system files are locked in a read-only state, meaning a simple system reboot can instantly wipe out a malware infection. For AI, Linux relies on local, open-source models like Ollama. You maintain complete ownership of your data and your prompts, though you have to accept a steeper technical learning curve to get it running. Out-of-the-box convenience is subsidized by your personal data. Achieving true privacy requires sacrificing that convenience for total system control. Windows 12 commands 99% compatibility with the Steam and Epic libraries. By utilizing GameCore and DirectX 12 Ultimate, it delivers up to a 20% frame rate boost in modern titles, providing the highest ceiling for gaming performance. But there is a hard limitation for competitive players. Kernel-level anti-cheat software, like Riot's Vanguard for Valorant, strictly rejects Linux, making Windows a requirement for professional play. In competitive environments, Windows is a necessity. Without it, the anti-cheat protocols simply will not allow the software to launch. Apple has tried to break into this space with their game porting toolkit, but macOS suffers from a chicken and egg problem. Only about 35% of the Steam library works, and AAA developers still don't prioritize it, leaving Mac largely irrelevant for serious gamers. The disruption is happening on Linux. Thanks to SteamOS 4.0 and Valve's Proton compatibility layer, 88% of the Steam library now runs flawlessly on Linux hardware. The trade-off for Windows gamers is system overhead. That gaming performance is packaged with heavy background bloatware and nearly 6 gigabytes of RAM consumed while the system is sitting completely idle. Casual and handheld gamers now have a viable, lightweight alternative in Linux. But if you play professional, competitive esports, you are strictly locked into the Microsoft ecosystem. For developers and creators, your operating system is a rigid boundary. If you build mobile applications for iOS, you have to use Xcode, which makes purchasing Mac hardware legally and functionally mandatory. That lock-in comes with specific advantages for creative professionals. The M5 chip offers high render stability, and software like Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro are heavily optimized for the silicon. Microsoft has tried to bridge the developer gap with WSL3, which runs a capable Linux subsystem directly inside the Windows interface. It's a solid compromise for full-stack developers who still need Windows GUI apps. But for enterprise infrastructure and AI research, Linux operates without a peer. Massive Docker clusters and AI models require the lowest possible latency. Linux provides direct VRAM access, starting containers instantly and compiling code 30% faster than rivals. The trade-off for that raw backend speed is application compatibility. Moving to Linux often means sacrificing native access to mainstream creative suites like Adobe. An operating system functions as a professional boundary. It determines which tools you can access, effectively setting the ceiling for what you can build or create. So, how do you decide? You identify which platform earns your investment based purely on what pays your bills or occupies your time. This flowchart tracks your primary workflow. If you are a competitive gamer or an enterprise worker embedded in corporate systems, you take this path. You choose Windows 12 to gain Vanguard Anti-Cheat and Office 365, and you accept the trade-off of heavy telemetry and UI ads. If you are a creative professional or a mobile developer, you go left. You choose macOS 16 for Xcode and hardware stability, accepting the high upfront cost and the loss of AAA gaming. If you are a back-end developer, an AI researcher, or someone who prioritizes privacy, you go straight down. You choose Linux for its open-source architecture, local LLM execution, and absolute data ownership. For power users willing to master the learning curve, this open-source architecture has transitioned from a niche hobby into the engine driving global supercomputing and AI training. Don't buy hardware based on synthetic benchmarks, and don't buy into an ecosystem for tasks you don't actually perform. The ultimate operating system is the one that becomes invisible. You endure its specific compromises, the OS gets out of your way, and you focus entirely on your real work.